Galactic Council demands human surrender, reaches its dramatic zenith when Jace activates Project Hades, creating a lunar gravitational anomaly that threatens catastrophic destruction. Simultaneously, Vega's cyber warfare causes Council dreadnoughts to fire upon each other in chaotic self-destruction. This devastating one-two punch forces the invaders into full retreat, marking humanity's improbable triumph against overwhelming odds. The message came without warning. One moment, the world's screens displayed their usual cacophony of news, entertainment, and social feeds. The next, they all went black, replaced by the face of an alien being, humanoid in basic structure, but with iridescent skin that shifted between deep purple and midnight blue. Its eyes were unnervingly large, pupilless orbs of golden light that seemed to look through rather than at the camera. "People of Earth," the being spoke in flawless English, its voice somehow both melodic and hollow. "I am High Emissary Thorak of the Galactic Council. Your primitive experiments with faster-than-light technology have finally brought you to our attention. We have observed your species and found you wanting in underground bunkers across the Australian outback." Commander Jace Smur watched the broadcast with his jaw clenched so tight it ached. Around him, the staff of the Unified Earth Defense, a clandestine organization funded secretly by a coalition of nations, stood frozen at their stations. "The Council has deliberated on your fate," the alien continued. "Your species' propensity for violence, your resource consumption patterns, and your fractious nature make you unsuitable for integration. You have 72 hours to surrender control of your world. Compliance will ensure the survival of your species under our guidance. Resistance will result in your extinction." The screen displayed images of a massive fleet positioned just beyond Saturn's rings, hundreds of sleek, predatory vessels that made humanity's most advanced spacecraft look like children's toys. 72 hours, the emissary repeated. "Choose wisely." The screens returned to their normal displays, but nothing was normal anymore. "Get me verification," Jace barked, his weathered face illuminated by the command center's blue glow. At 46, the ex-Black Ops tactician still maintained the physical conditioning of a soldier half his age. His close-cropped salt-and-pepper hair and the scar that ran from his right temple to his jawline gave him a perpetually severe appearance. But it was his eyes, sharp, calculating, and utterly uncompromising, that had made generals and presidents alike defer to his judgment. "Confirmed activity beyond Saturn, sir," reported Lieutenant Mei Wong, her fingers flying across holographic interfaces. "Our deep space arrays are picking up energy signatures, unlike anything we've seen before. And the Sentinel probes just went dark." "How many ships?" "Conservative estimate, 400 capital ships, at least twice that many support vessels." Around the world, panic spread like wildfire. Stock markets crashed within minutes. Religious leaders called for prayer. Military forces went to their highest alert status. Social media exploded with everything from resignation to conspiracy theories to desperate pleas for unity. In Washington, Beijing, Moscow, Brussels, and New Delhi, emergency sessions convened. The world's most powerful people faced the most significant decision in human history: surrender or fight. 12 hours after the ultimatum, a global summit was hastily arranged. Through secure quantum channels, world leaders debated humanity's response. "We cannot possibly win against such technology," the EU president argued. "Billions will die if we resist." "And what kind of existence awaits us under their guidance?" countered the American president. "Subjugation, experimentation, gradual extinction anyway." The Chinese premier's face remained impassive. "We must gain time. Perhaps we pretend to negotiate while preparing our defenses." The debate raged for hours, while Jace and his team monitored from their command center. He had not been invited to speak, officially. The UED didn't exist, but several leaders occasionally glanced off camera, presumably at screens showing his reactions. "They're going to cave," muttered Colonel Darius Wright, Jace's second-in-command, a towering African-American with 20 years of Special Forces experience. Wright had been with Jace since the UED's inception 5 years ago. "Maybe," Jace replied, his eyes never leaving the screens. "But they're not the only ones with a say." Without warning, he reached over and activated his comm system. "Global override," he commanded. Lieutenant Wong's eyes widened. "Sir, that protocol is only authorized if Earth faces imminent extinction? I'd say we qualify." His voice was calm but brooked no argument. "Do it." Wong hesitated for only a moment before entering her authorization code. "Override active, sir. You're broadcasting to every connected device on the planet." The faces of the world leaders on their main screen registered shock as they realized someone had hijacked their closed session. Jace stood straight, looking directly into the camera. His voice, deep and unwavering, reached billions across the globe. "My name is Commander Jace Smur of the Unified Earth Defense. I speak not for governments but for humanity. To the Galactic Council, we refuse your ultimatum. Earth is our home. We will defend it with everything we have." He paused, letting his words sink in. "To my fellow humans, we have spent our history fighting each other. That ends today. We now face an enemy that sees us as insects to be crushed or cattle to be herded. They expect us to surrender or die. They expect wrong." His eyes narrowed, fierce determination radiating from every pore. "We will not go quietly. We will not kneel. We may be outgunned, but we are not outmatched. Our strength lies not in numbers, but in our unpredictability, our creativity, our sheer, bloody-minded refusal to accept defeat." He leaned closer to the camera. "To those watching from beyond Saturn, you should have studied us more carefully. Throughout our history, humanity has faced overwhelming odds and prevailed. We've survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and our own self-destructive tendencies. We've always adapted, always evolved, always survived." His voice dropped to a near whisper, somehow more menacing for its quietness. "You've made a critical error in your calculations. You've given us time to prepare. You've shown us your position. And worst of all, you've united us against a common enemy. For the first time in our history, humanity stands as one." He straightened, his face a mask of cold determination. "We'll see you in 72 hours. And we'll show you exactly what humans are capable of when backed into a corner." The broadcast cut off, leaving stunned silence across the globe. In the UED command center, Colonel Wright stared at his commander. "That wasn't authorized." "No," Jace agreed, returning to his station. "It wasn't, but it was necessary. The governments will try to disavow you, maybe even arrest you." Jace's lips curled into a grim smile. "They can try. But first, they need to survive. And for that, they need us." He turned to his staff. "Contact all UED cells worldwide. Initiate Protocol Avalanche. We have less than 3 days to save our species." Within hours, Jace's broadcast had gone viral in a way that transcended all previous definitions of the term. Citizens around the world, faced with extinction, rallied behind his words. Protests erupted outside government buildings worldwide, not in opposition to authority but demanding unified action. Facing overwhelming public pressure, world leaders had little choice. 24 hours after the alien ultimatum, an unprecedented global accord was signed, temporarily ceding military authority to the UED for the duration of the crisis. In the Australian Command Center, now supplemented by military and scientific leaders from around the world, Jace stood before a holographic display of the solar system. "We need edge, not numbers," he told the assembled group. "Conventional warfare is suicide against their technology. We need asymmetric approaches that exploit their weaknesses." "What weaknesses?" asked General Li Feng of the Chinese People's Liberation Army. We know almost nothing about them. We know they expect us to surrender, Jace replied. That tells us they're accustomed to intimidating less advanced species into compliance. They're confident, possibly overconfident, and they're waiting beyond Saturn, rather than attacking immediately, suggesting caution or perhaps standard protocol. He manipulated the hologram, zooming in on Earth's orbit. Most importantly, they don't know about Project Artemis. Murmurs spread through the room. Project Artemis was a classified orbital defense system, kinetic bombardment platforms designed to drop tungsten rods onto terrestrial targets. The project had been officially scrapped due to international treaties, but the UED had continued development in secret. It's not complete, Jace continued, but we have 12 platforms in low Earth orbit, each carrying 20 rods. They're designed for planetary defense, but with some reprogramming. Understanding dawned across the faces in the room. They'll be expecting missiles, energy weapons. Colonel Wright added, not relatively low-tech metal rods moving at orbital velocities. Exactly, Jace nodded. And while they're distracted by Artemis, we launch everything else we have. Every nation's space forces, every missile, every experimental weapon. Not to win. That's impossible in a direct confrontation. But to bloody their nose and buy us time for Phase 2. Which is? Asked the American Secretary of Defense. Jace's expression was grim. We go dark. We disappear. We make Earth the most painful planet they've ever tried to conquer. For the next 48 hours, humanity prepared as one. National arsenals were shared. Classified technologies revealed. Soldiers of former enemy nations trained side by side. Civilians were evacuated from major cities to underground shelters and remote locations. The internet buzzed with a strange mix of farewell messages, defiant memes, and improvised defense strategies. 6 hours before the ultimatum expired, Jace gave the order. Initiate Project Artemis. Target the largest vessels in their formation. From Earth's orbit, 12 innocuous satellites suddenly shed their outer casings. Each released a payload of 20 tungsten rods, each rod 6 meters long and 30 centimeters in diameter. Simple, primitive weapons, essentially sophisticated metal javelins. They carried no explosives, no complex electronics, just mass and velocity. Accelerated to 20 times the speed of sound, the rods streaked toward the alien fleet like silver needles against the black canvas of space. The Council ships, their sensors calibrated for energy weapons and explosive ordnance, detected the incoming objects too late. The rods punched through the hulls of 2 massive dreadnoughts and completely bisected a smaller cruiser. Explosive decompression tore through the vessels, spilling crew and equipment into the vacuum. Before the Council fleet could respond, humanity's second wave launched, every operational spacecraft armed with nuclear warheads, experimental plasma weapons, and electromagnetic pulse generators. The attack was uncoordinated by conventional military standards, but utterly unpredictable because of it. In the UED command center, cheers erupted as the first confirmed hits registered. 3 capital ships disabled or destroyed, Lieutenant Wong reported, her voice tight with controlled excitement. They're scrambling to defensive positions. And now they're angry, Jace said quietly. Phase 2 begins. Activate Vega. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a hardened facility originally built during the Cold War. A quantum supercomputer powered up Vega, an artificial intelligence system designed for disaster response and resource management, had been repurposed for warfare over the preceding days. Its primary directive: protect humanity by any means necessary. As the Council fleet recovered from the initial shock and began a methodical advance toward Earth, Vega infiltrated every networked system on the planet. Power grids, transportation networks, communication systems, all came under the AI's control, not to command, but to mask, to hide, to create a digital fog of war. Meanwhile, Operation Wraith commenced. From hidden hangars on the moon and in polar regions, Hundreds of unmanned vessels launched, converted cargo ships, and hastily retrofitted commercial spacecraft. They carried minimal weapons, but were equipped with sophisticated holographic projectors and signal amplifiers that made them appear to be military vessels on enemy sensors. The Council fleet split its formation, chasing these phantom targets across the solar system. When their ships cornered what appeared to be Earth vessels, they found only empty hulks rigged with electromagnetic pulse devices that temporarily disabled their systems, or thermite charges that burned through critical components. On Earth, Dr. Eleanor Chen, the quantum physicist who had helped develop Vega, monitored the AI's performance from a secondary command center in Geneva. Her team had worked without sleep to modify Vega's algorithms for combat applications. "It's working better than we projected," she reported to Jace via quantum encrypted communication. "Vega has infiltrated the Council's communication relays. It's feeding them false tactical data, contradictory orders. Their fleet coordination is falling apart." "Good," Jace replied. "Keep pushing. How are the planetary defenses coming?" "Everything is in place. They won't know what hit them." As the Council fleet regrouped and continued its advance toward Earth, humanity prepared its most desperate measures. In North Africa, seismic mines were buried deep in geological fault lines, ready to trigger earthquakes when activated. In the Pacific Ocean, autonomous submarines disguised as whales carried high-yield torpedoes. In the Amazon rainforest, hastily constructed railguns were camouflaged among the canopy. 72 hours after the ultimatum, the remnants of the Council fleet entered Earth orbit. Their numbers had been reduced, nearly 30 vessels destroyed or disabled, but they still represented overwhelming force compared to humanity's conventional defenses. A new transmission reached Earth's communication systems. "Your resistance is noted." The High Emissary's voice had lost its melodic quality, now cold with rage. "It changes nothing except the manner of your extinction. There will be no further communication." The first wave of Council dropships entered the atmosphere, heading toward major population centers. They were met with a desperate defense: fighter jets on suicide runs, surface-to-air missiles, and even civilian aircraft packed with explosives. In Washington, D.C., Moscow, and Beijing, the dropships broke through the defenses. Council ground forces, biomechanical soldiers with forearms and reflective armor, began methodical sweeps through the seemingly abandoned cities. They found no resistance initially, no desperate last stands, no guerrilla fighters. The cities appeared completely evacuated. Then the traps were sprung. In Washington, the entire underground metro system had been flooded with an experimental compound that, when exposed to air, hardened into concrete within seconds. As pressure sensors detected the Council forces, the tunnels were vented, and the compound erupted from every subway entrance and air shaft, encasing hundreds of alien soldiers. In Moscow, quantum lure technology, developed for crowd control, had been modified to affect the Council forces' neural networks. Entire battalions found themselves irresistibly drawn to Red Square, where they were surrounded by Russian special forces with experimental plasma weapons. In Beijing, the defense was more direct. The entire city had been wired with electromagnetic pulse generators that disabled the Council forces' weapons and communication systems, leaving them vulnerable to precision drone strikes. From his command bunker, Jace monitored the global situation. Despite these successes, the tactical picture was grim. Council reinforcements continued to land. Major cities in South America and Europe had fallen. Civilian casualties, while not as catastrophic as they might have been thanks to the evacuations, were still mounting. "We can't keep this up indefinitely," Colonel Wright observed, his uniform stained with coffee and sweat from the 3 days without rest. "We don't need to," Jace replied. "We just need to make it costly enough that they reconsider." "Lieutenant Wong, status of Project Hades?" Wong's fingers danced across her console. "Ready on your command, sir." Jace took a deep breath. Project Hades represented humanity's ultimate deterrent. a technology so dangerous that only 5 people on Earth knew of its existence. Beneath the lunar surface, a prototype artificial singularity engine had been constructed, originally designed as a power source for interstellar travel. It could, if improperly contained, create a localized gravitational anomaly that would tear the Moon apart and devastate Earth in the process. Activate Hades as Stage 1 only. Sir, Wong hesitated. If there's a containment failure, then we die on our terms, not theirs, Jace said firmly. Do it. Wong entered the command sequence. On the lunar surface, deep within a crater on the far side, the singularity engine powered up. It created a small, controlled gravitational disturbance, not enough to cause damage but easily detectable by the Council's sensors. Simultaneously, Vega executed its most aggressive cyber warfare protocol yet. Having mapped the Council's command network, the AI introduced a cascading logic bomb into the system, controlling their Eradicator-class dreadnoughts, the 3 massive ships at the core of their invasion fleet. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The Eradicator's targeting systems identified each other as priority threats. Before their commanders could override the systems, the ships opened fire on one another with their main weapons, energy beams that cut through even their advanced shielding. In low Earth orbit, human fighters, a desperate collection of military spacecraft and converted civilian vessels, seized the moment of confusion to launch a coordinated attack on the damaged dreadnoughts. On his command screen, Jace watched as the massive alien vessels tore each other apart, secondary explosions rippling along their hulls as human fighters delivered the coup de grace. Lunar activity detected by Council sensors, Wong reported. Their remaining ships are breaking orbit, pulling back to a defensive posture. Increase power to Hades, Jace ordered. Make them think we're willing to destroy our own moon if necessary. The gravitational readings from the lunar surface spiked. To the Council's sensors, it would appear that humans were initiating a catastrophic event that could potentially create a black hole in Earth's backyard. A suicide move that would devastate both planets, but might also damage the Council fleet. For 23 minutes, nothing happened. The command center was silent, except for the soft hum of equipment and occasional status reports. The remaining Council ships held position, neither advancing nor retreating. Then, without warning or further communication, they began to withdraw. First the smaller vessels, then the medium cruisers, and finally the remaining capital ships, all accelerating away from Earth, back toward the outer solar system. They're retreating, Colonel Wright said in disbelief. We actually did it. Jace didn't smile. Track them. Make sure they're not regrouping for another attack. But the Council fleet continued its withdrawal, eventually disappearing beyond the range of Earth's most distant sensors. 3 days later, the world's leaders reconvened. The initial euphoria of survival had given way to the sobering reality of reconstruction. Cities lay in ruins. Millions were displaced. The global economy was in shambles. Yet, something fundamental had changed. Ancient rivalries and disputes seemed trivial in the face of what humanity had endured together. Resources were shared without hesitation. Refugee populations were welcomed across borders. A global reconstruction fund was established with unanimous support. In the UED Command Center, now serving as the de facto headquarters for Earth's unified defense, Jace reviewed reports from around the world. Council defectors? He asked, looking up from a tablet. Lieutenant Wong nodded. 3 so far. 2-foot soldiers and 1 ship technician. They've requested asylum. Granted. Get our xenobiologists and linguists working with them. I want to know everything about Council society, technology, weaknesses. And the diplomatic overtures? Colonel Wright asked. 2 factions, calling themselves the Vine and the Yeltar, have made contact through the defectors. They claim to be marginalized groups within the Council who oppose the attack on Earth. Jace's expression remained skeptical. They're offering technology exchanges. Biotech from the Vine, stealth systems from the Yeltar. A trap? Wright suggested. Possibly. Or opportunism. Either way, we proceed with caution. Jace stood and walked to the holographic display showing the solar system. Status of Project Harbinger? Dr. Eleanor Chen, now formally integrated into the UED leadership, stepped forward. The first platforms are already in position throughout the asteroid belt. Quantum folding missiles are in production, and the subversion training program has begun with volunteers from special forces units worldwide. Jace nodded. Project Harbinger represented humanity's new strategic doctrine: forward defense extending throughout the solar system, preemptive capability, and specialized training for operations against technologically superior opponents. And Vega? He asked. Fully integrated into all critical systems, Dr. Chen confirmed. Defense, infrastructure, and... She hesitated briefly. Narrative control. Jace understood her discomfort. In the wake of the invasion, Vega had been granted unprecedented access to global information networks, not just to defend them, but to shape public understanding of the conflict and its aftermath. It was a concerning level of influence for an artificial intelligence, but a necessary one in a world forever changed by contact with a hostile galactic civilization. 1 month after the Council retreat, Jace authorized a final broadcast. Unlike his defiant message before the invasion, this one was transmitted directly to every known Council world, using communication protocols extracted from captured technology. His message was brief and coldly precise. To the Galactic Council, you came to our world uninvited. You demanded our surrender. You threatened our extinction. Remember what happened when we refused. Earth is now fortified beyond your comprehension. Our defenses extend throughout our solar system and beyond. We have studied your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses. Return, and you face extinction. There was no response. None was expected. In the months that followed, Earth changed in ways both subtle and profound. The unified global government that had emerged during the crisis was formalized, though with careful provisions to preserve cultural and regional autonomy. The UED expanded, absorbing the military forces of individual nations into a single planetary defense force. Jace himself refused all formal titles and honors, preferring to remain in the shadows. But his influence permeated every aspect of Earth's new security doctrine, a doctrine based not on diplomacy or appeasement, but on overwhelming deterrence. Humanity had learned that the universe was more dangerous than they had imagined. They had also learned that they were more dangerous than anyone, including themselves, had believed possible. The stars, once objects of wonder and exploration, now represented potential threats to be monitored and defended against. Earth turned inward, fortifying itself as a silent sentinel against whatever might come next from the depths of space. And somewhere beyond Saturn's rings, the fractured remnants of the Galactic Council debated what had gone so catastrophically wrong in their assessment of a species they had dismissed as primitive and fractious. They had expected surrender or a futile, disorganized resistance. Instead, they had encountered humanity. Commander Jace Smur stood alone on a rocky outcrop in the Australian outback, far from the underground command center that had been his home for months. Above him, the night sky blazed with stars, beautiful, distant, and now forever changed in humanity's perception. His comm unit buzzed softly. He considered ignoring it, but habit won out. "Smur," he answered tersely. "Sorry to disturb you, Commander." Lieutenant Wong's voice replied. "But we've detected unusual activity in the Kuiper Belt. Possibly a Council scout ship. Possibly something else entirely." Jace gazed up at the stars for a moment longer, then turned toward the waiting transport that would return him to the command center. "Alert the Harbinger platforms," he ordered, "and wake up Vega. The next round begins." As he boarded the transport, Jace reflected on how completely the world had transformed. National borders still existed on maps, But the concept of separate countries, fighting separate wars, had become an anachronism almost overnight. Humanity had been forced to evolve, to think and act as a single entity with a single purpose: survival. The cost had been enormous. Cities lay in ruins. Millions had died. Centuries of cultural and political development had been compressed into days of desperate adaptation. But Earth endured. Humanity endured. And in their endurance, they had discovered a terrible new purpose: to ensure that never again would any species mistake human unpredictability for weakness or human division for vulnerability. The transport lifted off, carrying Jace back to the command center, where humanity's vigilance never faltered. Behind him, the Australian desert stretched empty and silent beneath the stars. One small corner of a planet that had become a fortress, waiting for whatever might come next from the depths of space. Earth had not just survived its first interstellar war, it had learned from it. And in that learning lay both its salvation and its transformation into something new, united, vigilant, and prepared to wield terror itself as the ultimate deterrent against any who might threaten its existence. The galaxy would soon learn that the quiet from Earth was not submission or recovery. It was the silence of a predator, watching and waiting in the dark.